Mediating Evictions and Foreclosures with or Without Lawyers, Part 1. Part of the series, Florida Mediator Roundtable with Tye Bourdony.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Lawyers and Mediators International Show and Podcast from instantmediations.com. It's where we discuss law and conflict resolution topics to educate both professionals and everyday people. Please remember, nothing contained in these episodes constitutes legal advice, so please talk to your lawyer, as cases are fact-dependent.
Hi, I'm Mac Pierre-Louis, attorney, mediator, and arbitrator working in Houston, Texas, throughout Texas, and in Florida, throughout the whole state of Florida.
And I am Natalia Łowska-Czajka, attorney, mediator, and arbitrator currently based in Warsaw, Poland.
And I'm Tye Bourdony out of Florida, Orlando, Florida. I'm a full-time mediator, a primary mediation trainer, and arbitrator as well.
All right, let's get started with this day's topic. But remember, you can catch this discussion and past and future shows on our website, instantmediations.com, or on the Lawyers and Mediators International YouTube channel, or on the podcast, all conveniently from the Instant Mediations app. So be sure to stay connected. All right, Tye. So during COVID, a lot of people were not working and people fell behind in rents. And the government came in and basically said, you can't kick people out of their homes because we have a pandemic going around the world. And these moratoriums, as we called them, prevented landlords from evicting people and prevented banks from foreclosing on people. So now in the US, where COVID is starting to wrap itself up, we are beginning to see the signs that there's going to come a tsunami of potential legal cases involving tenants and landlords. That's going to make lives pretty difficult for people because now, it's time to deal with the back rents and all of that. Can you tell us a little bit about evictions and foreclosures and mediations and what's to come? But today's focus is going to be mainly on evictions.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me as well. And yeah, I agree. Evictions and foreclosures are coming. Evictions, it seems, are going to hit first, right? And there's so much talk about that. We'll stress evictions today, and our next one we'll talk about foreclosures. But in essence, when I was the staff mediator, right, where is it that I would see the evictions, right? You'd see that typically in the small claims venue, right? Folks haven't been paying their rents because they haven't been able to, and like you said, the moratorium that's coming to an end soon. And so what's going to happen is those folks who haven't been able to pay, they are going to get served sometime in the near future, right? And when they get served, that's part of the eviction process. And there is the eviction process has a certain way that it takes place. So first you get served, and then there's a certain number of days within which you have to respond. That is the time when parties need to, hopefully it's going to be set for mediation right away, but there could be instances when it isn't. And so, right, because in Florida, you have to go through the court to evict somebody. So that means someone can request, if it's not done automatically, someone can request mediation. And so there's going to be links that people are going to be able to click on. And for instance, there's one to request mediation. Now, this is the Ninth Circuit. This is Orange County, Florida, and the Central Florida. Every circuit, every jurisdiction in Florida, every place. There's going to be places where you could probably do the same, but it's going to be specific to individual areas. In Florida, right? The first thing to do is go get a consultation, right? Speak to an attorney. So there's another link here, again, for the Orange County Bar Association. They have an attorney referral program. Mac, you had indicated for instance, in Houston, there's a service where folks can get free access to an attorney. The point of the matter is find out where and what that access is, please speak to an attorney, right? But by the same token, request mediation. So by requesting mediation and or by going to mediation, so the eviction is going to get put on hold, so to speak, until folks go to mediation. Now, what is it that they can do at mediation? And a lot of times I would see folks come without lawyers, right? Let's be honest. If you're getting evicted, you don't have money for the rent. It's going to be hard for you to pay for the attorney as well. But it's never a bad idea to, at the very least, try and consult with somebody. But at the end of the day, how can mediation from the eviction process help? Well, the fact of the matter is, what the mediation typically, what you see is people are coming together with the landlord and the mediator, and they are trying to do what? Come up with some kind of agreement with respect to all this back rent that's owed. In essence, mediation allows you to come to a new agreement. So let's say $4,000, $5,000 is owed. What they're going to do is they're going to try and put you on a payment plan. They're going to try and find the way that folks are going to be able to actually stay, right? So when you get to mediation, what they're going to try and do is see, can the landlord and can the tenant come to, in essence, a new contract? Can you come to agreement on the amount of money that's owed, and how, which allows you then to move forward? And there's a lot of different ways to do that. Let's say, like I said, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 is owed. Well, if you have some cash, you can try and see if the landlord is going to take a lump sum, right? But there's a lot of things that are now at this point going to be tacked onto this bill. The cost of of bringing the case, right? There have been late fees. And then whatever it is that you owe. So when you combine all of that and you get to mediation, that amount is the amount that the parties have to see if they can come to an agreement on. So how do you do so? And a lot of times it's a monthly contract starting from that day. The parties will agree, okay, this is how much I'm going to pay on a monthly basis to cover what I owe. And sometimes that's on top of what the rent is, and or the rent, there's a new price that's come to that the parties agree upon. And then how much is owed. It can be complicated, and it can be a tough process, and it can be really tough when the parties don't have the money. And if they don't have money, go ahead.
Can you please tell us what pre-suit actions can be taken and what complaints can a tenant file before a pending eviction is filed?
Right.
How do you see it as a mediator, knowing that you are not an attorney, as opposite to Mark and me? We are also practicing attorneys, but we are asking you for your mediation perspective.
Well, so what I've seen from a pre-suit perspective, so before the case is filed, people who are potentially facing eviction, they know that they haven't been paying their rent, and they know that it's going to be coming. And so again, there are other links, right? Orange County Consumer Complaint Form, the Florida Consumer Complaint Guide, housing discrimination complaints. So case by case, of course, right? You don't just file things just to file things, but if in fact there is a good cause, right? There are any one of a number of reasons why an individual can file a complaint in whatever their jurisdiction is against the landlord, right? Has there been discrimination? Are they doing something, against the law? What I found is if individuals are proactive, they can so if there's something pending already, some kind of complaint from a real estate perspective, the landlord is discriminating, the landlord hasn't made repairs, pick something that would apply. The landlord is going to have a hard time bringing that case because something else is pending. So I've often found, I like to call complaints soft power, right? If individuals, so for instance, the Florida Consumer Complaint Guide, in essence, every single place in Florida, every agency that you can file a complaint with whenever you have a problem, in this case it's an eviction, you would go through the list and see, where can I file a complaint if in fact I have good cause to file a complaint. And what I have seen really successful pre-suit pro se litigants do is, how many complaints can I file? Let's say you can file 3 complaints. So you file a complaint, and then 2 weeks later you file another complaint, and then 2 weeks later you file another complaint, so that over the course of the next month to 3, every 25, 30 days or so, some agency is now sending that landlord notice of a complaint having been filed. That landlord is going to have a hard time to then go and file something against you, right, without it looking as if they're doing something wrong. And or there could be a process in place through these other complaints that may help mitigate some of these circumstances. Now, I want to be really, really careful. If in fact, so a mediator, I'm everyone's neutral. I'm the landlord's neutral, and I'm the party who's being evicted. I'm everyone's neutral. So someone who is evicting someone, they have the right to do so because their rent's not being paid, right? So just because you're being evicted, please don't go and file things in an effort to somehow put off being evicted. If there's good cause for you to file a complaint, please, by all means, file a complaint. And then it's going to help in your suit with respect to the landlord, right? So there are some things that people can do, right? If there's some kind of fraud, if the landlord hasn't been doing, repairing things, if the landlord is somehow discriminating against them. So you can file these complaints, and if they're filed before the eviction process is if they're filed before the landlord has started the eviction process, the landlord may not be able to evict at that point without those complaints being taken care of, right? And so the housing discrimination, Florida complaint guide, Orange County consumer complaint, these are resources. If in fact someone has good cause to use these, they can use them. And you can do them at any time, but with respect to the evictions that's going on, some people have the right to evict. Landlords, right? If they're not getting their rent, that's why they're going to evict you. But if they're not playing fair, if they're not doing things the right way, then filing complaints before the eviction process can help put off the eviction process, can buy some time, because sometimes what folks need is time to get money together or to find another place, or it's case specific, right? Every case is a little different, but there are things that folks can do, and speaking to an attorney and looking at what the laws are for landlord tenant in Florida. What are your rights? There are other links here. Links in organizations that can help is another place where folks can know, what am I entitled to? What's the best way for me to handle this? What does the landlord have to do? What do I have to do? And so knowledge is power, right? So at the very first thing to do is speak to someone, request a mediation. But before you're going to get evicted, right? Are there issues that your landlord has not been taken care of? If you fall within those protections, initiate those protections and complaints before the eviction is initiated, and it may help, right? But again, it's case by case specific. That's not everybody. Every case is different. I know I was all over the place on the map with that.
No, it's fine. So unlike foreclosures, we'll touch on next time, oftentimes there might be some bad news you might have to deliver to someone, right? If there just is not a way to resolve the issue. Can you kind of talk a little bit about that and what people should get themselves, I guess, ready for? Because if people feel that, well, you know what, I'm going to lose anyway, I'm going to be kicked out of my home, then they may not bother coming to mediation. They may feel that it's just a lost cause. However, in some cases, they're not all going to be miracles. Sometimes it's not going to work out. So how do we balance when someone should just go and see a mediator with the opposition versus when, okay, maybe it's going to be a tough case?
Well, even if mediation is not going to work, because mediation can only work if the parties can work together, because there is a solution. Sometimes there's not solutions. Sometimes you're going to get evicted, right? But at the very least, so when mediation is initiated and or requested, you can't just go to mediation tomorrow. It's going to take, well, and now with the pandemic, things are backed up. It might take 30 to 45 or 60 days. So that has the effect of giving you a little more time to be where you're at. And time sometimes is what an evicted family needs. You have to find a place to go. You have to figure out how you're going to do it. You have to pay for the moving truck. You have to pay for the first month's rent and the security deposit. And so sometimes time is the thing that somebody needs, right? So at mediation, the point is to try and find a resolution that allows the parties to continue on in their contract. And plenty of times the parties are able to come to a new agreement. Great. But if the parties aren't able to come to a new agreement, mediation can also help the parties figure out what the time frame looks like, right? Between what can the parties agree that the tenant has until X number of this date in order to do something, and or sometimes the eviction process sometimes there's nothing that can be done, right? Sometimes if mediation is unsuccessful, then you're going to go and you're going to go in front of the judge. What's the judge going to order, right? Is the judge going to order that the parties, yep, you're being evicted and it's going to proceed? Well, then there's a certain number of days that's going to happen in. So mediation is a great place for the parties to try and come to agreement, right? And at the very least, it can give you a little more time, right? So even if a party thinks, oh, it doesn't matter because I don't have the money, it's a waste of time. It's not a waste of time, because if you can get 30 to 45 or 60 more days, depending on the jurisdiction, don't you need that much more time? I mean, I've been in situations where I've had to leave, and then you start to worry because you have a family, or even if it's just you. But what the logistics of going from one place to another can be daunting. And so the more time that somebody has, the better. So try and go to mediation and come to a new agreement. Absolutely. But even if you can't, go to mediation, because you're going to get yourself a little bit more time, and then find appropriate resources as well. Knowledge is power. You have to speak to somebody. Speaking to an attorney who does landlord tenant, that's going to be your best bet. Go to some resources that's going to get you in front of them. But by the same token, a lot of the links that we're sharing are also more information to help parties who find themselves in this situation. And there's also legal aid. Sometimes they're going to be able to help. Point is, this is a tough time for everybody, and resources are stretched thin, right? So before the eviction, can you qualify for one of the programs, the rent assistance program, or for some other program? Do the best that you can. But at the end of the day, if it's coming down to the eviction process has begun, you're better off going to mediation than not going to mediation, because it's going to, at the very least, it's going to give you a little bit more time, right? Yep. So I think at the end of the day, it comes down to time, even if nothing can be done, right? In foreclosures as well as in evictions, right? A good foreclosure defense is really nothing more than buying time until the end, right? So going through the process and going through mediation and to mediation, even if it's going to be unsuccessful, can still help your family. And every month is precious, in my opinion, right? But it's case by case, of course.
What would you say is a percentage of mediation cases where there is some kind of negotiated outcome versus when there's nothing?
Well, so normally speaking, right? When I was in the mediation department, I would tell you 70-75% of cases get settled. Now here in this foreclosure, issue where we're talking about people who don't, the eviction process and foreclosure process, because people have lost jobs. So people are behind the 8 ball, and they've been behind the 8 ball for a bit. The question is, did they get a job, and do they have some money now? Now you can negotiate a little bit. So while I still want to say that the general trend is more likely than not that there's going to be some kind of agreement, it's still case by case. And the majority of the case, so once the evictions start, those months and weeks that follow, when everyone goes to small claims, most of those people are not going to, they're usually debt collection, right? People didn't pay a credit card, they didn't pay, some kind of debt that they owe. So you're still going to have those folks, but now you're going to have a larger number of eviction cases. So it's tough to say what the percentage is, right? It really depends on have people been getting their jobs back, right? Has there been rental assistance out there have sufficiently to make a difference? That's very hard for me to in any way quantify, but more often than not, people can come to agreement. Mediation is a great place for that. And the question is, are you coming to mediation ready to try and come to agreement is the point, right? Your landlord needs to get paid. They have a mortgage. They don't want to lose the house to foreclosure. And so understand, try and work with them, and hopefully they're going to try and work with you. And most folks can come to some kind of agreement, but it's very hard to do when there's no money. If there's no money, you're gonna be leaving this place probably, right? So it is case by case, but if we're talking normal times, more often than not, people can come to agreement. And in essence, mediation is a place where you get a new agreement and you start from there and you move forward. I hope most folks are going to be able to do that. I know some are. I know. I hope it's the majority. But I guess we'll have to see. We'll have to wait and see how it works out. But evictions have a better percentage rate than foreclosures. By the time someone comes to see me in foreclosure mediation, most likely they're not going to. I would tell you it's 20-30% of cases are positive in mediation from a foreclosure perspective. But from an eviction perspective, it's the other way around, right? I just hope that folks have had money.
Tye, thank you so much. And the foreclosures we want to leave for the next parts of this little series and of this episode. This is actually a very vital need of everybody to have the roof over their heads. And thank you for enhancing everybody to understand that via mediation they can help themselves, they can help their landlords too. They can help everybody in the process to go through that smoothly, to work out a solution that will not be painful, that will enable everybody to stay on the surface and not to drown. And thank you for bringing this hope. And from my perspective here in Poland, the government is openly saying that they are also going to lift out this moratorium. So we will be facing this more and more on evictions when cases are brought to the court and people are facing this. Please remember, everybody listening and tuning in, mediation can help. Whenever you are facing eviction, whenever you are threatened by the landlord, whenever you are the landlord and you are facing the situation where you need to evict someone. So please remember, mediation works, mediation makes miracles, and please stay tuned and listen to us in the next episode on Foreclosures with Tye Bourdony and us, instantmediations.com, and on the go, listen on the app, Instant Mediations app. Let's hear you soon.